Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Kendra Luebuga, and I love to paint with watercolor and gouache. Today I'm going to take you to Silver Falls State Park in Oregon. This is a park that is about an hour and a half to 2 hours drive away from Portland, Oregon, where we live. And we went there last week as part of our spring break excursions. It was very cold. There was still snow on the ground. But there was quite a lot of snow melt coming down off that hillside, and so we got to see some spectacular waterfalls and a lot of snow melt coming down the cliff, just like that. This week, I thought I'd try something new. I have never taken a piece of watercolor paper before and torn it into shreds. But this is my inspiration. This is a page from Ann Blockley's book, Experimental Landscapes in Watercolor, which you're seeing on the screen right now. She shares many techniques for making your watercolor more experimental, just like she says on the cover. And like I said, this is a first for me to tear up a sheet of perfectly good watercolor paper, glue it back together, and then paint on it. This is my inspiration picture that you saw in the very beginning. And so I tore the paper with this in mind. So I wasn't totally randomly tearing the sheet of paper. I was trying to do it in a way that would work well with my inspiration photo. Ann Blockley has a number of books. I think she's up to 7 or 8, and this is the only one I happen to own at this moment. But I will link in the description below a collection of all of her books so that you can take a look and see which one might fit for you. She's very interesting to take a look at. So here you see me gluing it back together with some golden gloss polymer. First I tried my Aleene's tacky glue that you can see on the right, but I need to add a little water to it and swish it around and get it a little bit more viscous because it is a little stuck at the moment. But the golden polymer is fine, and the only thing I was doing is I was trying to make sure not to get too much of it on the front side because it can change it sort of seals the paper, and I didn't want my watercolors to ride along the top of the paper. I wanted them to sink down into the watercolor paper. You can do this both ways, by the way. It could be a very interesting technique. I've done this once where I've painted on watercolor paper and then I've sealed certain colors with this exact polymer and then painted over to get different kind of glaze. And it does have an interesting effect that way. But in this experiment, all I wanted to do was to get that paper back together so that I could play around with this brand new technique. All right, so as you're watching me glue back my torn up sheet of watercolor paper, I thought I'd talk about the process this week of working on this project. It was, in the end, I have to say today, finally, I found some very, very interesting progress. What do I call it? Some very interesting things to explore in the future about this process. But this process did feel like kind of a long slog in a way because it wasn't very immediate. For instance, the first day was tearing apart the paper and gluing it back together. Then it dried overnight. And as you'll see shortly, I apply some liquid frisket in the areas that I want to stay super white, like where the waterfall is coming down and where it's splashing into the pond and where it is running over some rapids on the river. Liquid frisket is a product that I'll link into the description below so you can look at it if you haven't used it before. This one has a nib. As you can see, I pull this blue cap off, and in theory, I should be able to get some very straight, beautiful lines. But as you can see, the way my technique is it kind of comes out in a blobby consistency. This is no problem for what I'm doing here, but it just could be my technique because I don't use this product very often. It has a little bit of a smell that I don't like, and there are other ways to mask, like using a piece of candle or even using that gloss medium that I was showing you before. But in the spirit of exploration, I decided to try the Frisket again and give it another go and see how it could work in this kind of environment. So after this Frisket was applied, I gave it a day, and then I gave it another day. And so it was thoroughly dried before I started painting on it yesterday. Okay, here I am, and I've torn my paper and glued it together, and I've applied some masking fluid. It's all dry. It's been drying for 2 days because I'm afraid now to apply color. So there's the back, because I think now I think it's a promising start. When I was tearing up this paper, I was feeling very naughty, and it didn't feel right to tear up a perfectly good piece of watercolor paper. But now that it's torn, I'm very excited about these edges that are half, I don't know how you call it, but the layers have separated and they're looking very exciting. So now I have to figure out what colors to use, and I want to take Ann Blockley's advice to avoid the monotonous color stereotypes often found in landscapes. She says you need to be inventive. So now, pressure's on. What colors would I use? Of course, my source photo is pretty much all green with a waterfall, which is white. So that's the monotonous color stereotypes that are to be avoided at all cost. So anyway, this is where I am, and what I'm going to do today is I'm going to use a sheet or two of blank watercolor paper that's small to try out some color combinations. Maybe I'll do it this way. And I also want to show you, here's the book. This is the book, Experimental Landscapes in Watercolor by Ann Blockley. This is the only book of hers that I own out of the 7 or 8 that she's published, but maybe not for long, I don't know. I will link to all of her books in my description so you can take a look. So this is what I've done so far, right? In this page 67, she says, I glued torn pieces of watercolor paper together, overlapping them into an interesting design. I ripped some of the paper to reveal strips of the more absorbent inner layer. Inks and watercolors sank into the edges of the paper strata, emphasizing the pattern. So this is what got me excited about tearing up paper. And so I'm going to try that. But also, this gets me excited. This is called Poppy Dance, and what got me excited here is, well, 1, the inventive colors, but 2, this white gouache that she put in here and let it run down, and the way this sort of feels like a waterfall, but it has a lot of colors in it. So I'm going to try and maybe replicate or just to go in that direction and see what happens in my own painting. All right, we will see. All right. Procrastination is really coming into play now, I think, because now I've decided that I need to draw an accurate depiction of my scene before I try to paint it. So here I go. comes down right there. There's like a thing there. And, okay, it's like a cliff face or something here. And then we've got a lot of trees coming up. And a lot of really like dark areas, just kind of randomly poking around in here. Down over here, down right there, even right over in here we've got some super shaded spots. Okay, this is super shaded, this whole thing is shaded. Then we've got some of these trees. Am I in the camera? Okay. Some of them have branches that are just coming out over the edge of the waterfall. They're all mossy. These are a mossy clump of trees, really. Do I want them to be mossy in my picture? I don't know. But right now, all I know is that they are mossy in real life. And then there's all this scrub brushy stuff over here. There's a few rocks down here. Okay. And then there's like this area that juts out. It's kind of green and kind of yellow. All right, I want to start with that. Okay, so if I'm going to just give myself like a reference painting, this is what it's going to be. It's all sunshiny on this side. There's this sunshiny bit that comes down like that. All sunshiny right here. And the rest is in shade, except of course there's an area over here that's rather sunshiny as well. Look on the ground, in the trees behind this tree, there's all this sunshiny stuff going on. I think is why the composition works, because we see this sunshine on both sides here. Just bring in the happiness, new gamboge. All right, now let's just get a teeny bit of blue in there, because maybe, now maybe here's the thing. Maybe on the shady side, I'm just gonna put a bunch of blue. And purple on the shady side of the knobby hill. That could work. Possibility. Okay, now I've got so much wet paint on this little piece of paper. I'm gonna have to let it dry. But wouldn't it be fun to see what the salt does if I put a little salt on that super dark, oops, not that much salt. All right, on this super dark area. Again, I think I might be a little early on this deal, but I'm gonna try right now. All right, back in the container you go. I need a better salt container, I think. Just like a little jar. Okay, now this needs to dry. So this needs to dry. And this one where I was just trying out colors, can feel on the bottom it's still wet. So I guess I should wait a second, calm down, and read my Ann Blockley book for a little bit and see if there's any other inspiration to glean out for this painting. All right, that's it for now. Okay, here we are on the next day, and here you can see the salt that I dropped onto this painting. Well, it was a couple days ago. So now I'm rubbing it off. I let it dry completely. All right. Okay, now clean that up later. So now that the salt is off, you can see this, oh, my dirty fingers, and this pretty amazing texture. And so let's see, you saw me painting this one, but you didn't see me painting this one because something happened to my camera. I was trying out a few colors and I was trying out a little bit of salt. And check out the pink. This pink is opera rose mixed with a tiny bit of pyro red. And wowee, that has a really interesting effect. This is just fine sea salt. It's nothing, you just saw this in my past video, fine sea salt. Every sea salt will give you a different effect. Like, you know, if it's big flaky sea salt, it'll give you one kind of an effect. Okay, on this green, which is a mix of cerulean and new gamboge, it's not quite as fantastic as the reds, but still it gives me this texture that's very much like moss, which is pretty cool. So I think I'll use this in my painting for this week, but I think I want to control it a bit, so I might have to tape off certain areas, or I guess just not drop in certain areas if it's possible, in order to not have salt in certain areas, not have that salty grainy texture in certain areas. Okay, finally, I really need to drop some color on this thing. Today is Thursday, tomorrow is when I want to drop this video. I need to at least start something. So perhaps what I can do is get that purple color going. Now I don't actually even remember what that color was, but in my I have the most darling little paper mache bowl that I made, and I believe Quin Rose is this one, and not ivory black. Perhaps Prussian blue plays a part, or maybe it's Quin Magenta, Quin Rose, and then there used to be some Prussian blue here. I think that's how it was. So let me add in a little Prussian blue on this side. I have my main palette over here, this palette, which is just a ceramic dish. But I like to keep another palette that is just a separate yogurt lid, because then I keep the colors nicely fresh. Okay, gotta go in at some point. Be brave. Get that blue in there. Get those Quin, what did I say those even were? Quinacridone Rose and Quinacridone Magenta. The Quins. The Quins are here. All right. And let's just, how about if I procrastinate a teeny bit further and just paint water on here to start. right over my resist, because of course that frisket is going to keep the white of the paper white underneath. And I'm going to paint only part of this hillside dark because the rest of it is in sunlight and is going to be all new gamboge. Whew. Okay. All right, let's just do this thing. Oh, feels better already. Feels better already, having gotten some paint onto the paper. Okay. Now, I'm gonna go slow along the edges. Kind of awesome. It's inventive for sure. You never see a purple hillside on the side of a waterfall. Okay. Leave some edges that don't look super contrived. There we go. And a little bit more blue down in here. Prussian blue, very strong. Okay. You know, gotta tell myself, if things don't work out, I can always do it all over again. Okay, while I give that a chance, I want to get a nice sheen on it before I drop the salt. So I thought I'd drop some cerulean down in here. I'm going to be realistic with the water as much as possible. In fact, the water in my picture is all brown. But I've tried actually making a river the color it actually was. I think that green was the color at that time. And it just looks like it's a field of grass. It just doesn't come through. All of my masking fluid on this part is masking out the white, what do you call that? Where the water is bumping up against rocks. And let's see, just upstream from it is it where it always has the darkest part. So I will emphasize the darkest part of the rapids on the upstream part and see how that feels. I've sort of torn the papers in a pattern that makes sense for the painting, for the picture. It's not random by any effect, by any stretch of the imagination. It's not random. That would be an interesting experiment to try, though, to randomly rip up a piece of watercolor paper and paint it, or and glue it back together again randomly. Don't know if I have the heart to do that, but I barely had the heart to tear this piece of paper up. It just felt so wrong. Okay. All right, now we've got something interesting there and something interesting here, and I think it's about time to drop some things on here. I'm gonna do it by rubbing my fingers together with the salt instead of just sprinkling it out, because I feel like I get more control this way. And let's see, last time I did it mostly in the middle bit. I don't know, looks pretty cool. okay. Okay, but I think that's enough. I'll put the rest back into my little container. Okay, so that needs to dry completely. Can't touch that until it's totally dry. But what else could I work on this painting? Oh, I know. I could do a little bit more. I could do some mossy bits like that. So I could definitely, so let's see, this is the one that has, cerulean and new gamboge. And so I'm going to mix a little bit of deep green and find some mossy rocks. Let's see. Down over here there's some mossy rocks. It's okay if it rubs together with this blue because it'll just make it a darker green. I think this whole little triangle of space should all be green. When I showed my husband this painting before I started painting on it, he was like, "Are you gonna even up the edges?" No, I'm gonna even up the edges. That's part of it. That's part of the art of it, is that the edges are all raggedy. Not gonna cut off any pieces or add any pieces to make it straight. No, no, no. I think that's enough. A little bit more new gamboge down in here somewhere. Drop it in. Get this color nice and strong. I think I'm gonna add a little bit of Prussian blue over here too. Just okay. So that's drying a little bit. I took my stick and I dragged it through a little bit just because I couldn't keep my fingers off it. I'm feeling super like tight about this because I'm so kind of excited about this promising start with a new technique, and so I have got to mess this up a little bit so that I can get loose and calm down about the whole thing. So I don't know if this is gonna work, but oh, did my stubby little pencil just break off completely? Oh, what a disappointment. What a disappointment. It's like it was feeling so smooth and nice all the time, and then just like a Derwent colored pencil, it broke off. It's kind of a hard mix, don't you think? Like, you want to have a watercolor pencil that is soft enough so that it goes on very nice, but you still want it to be hard enough that you can like press down and really color with it. All right, so what am I going to do here? I don't know. How about, so there's these dark spots that are up under the bushes, and of course I need values. I need darkest darks and lightest lights. And at that very moment, my GoPro decided that that was enough of filming that part of the program. So I picked it up a little bit later. You can see quite a bit more paint has been put down. And for me, this middle part of this painting is where things started to get very exciting. I'm really excited about the lines and the little dots and where reality is breaking down and not looking like the source photo anymore. That's what gets me to my painter's desk every day, is pursuing that that feeling and emotion in the painting more than the realistic expression of a source photo or what's in front of me. So one thing I can say that I really like that's realistic about this painting is the dark bits that I put just on the upstream bits of the rapids. Really does make it appear like how the rapids are in real life. So I really like that. But then for the non-reality side, I like these lines that I'm starting to drag down the hillside with my Stabilo pencil. This pencil, if you haven't heard about it yet, it's just a water-soluble pencil that you can buy, black, I think red and blue. They have a few colors. I only have the black one. So it's like a watercolor pencil because as you see me dipping it there in my swish water and then drawing on my paper, or if I have a wet piece of the paper, then I can draw on it and it really activates. Or you can draw on your paper dry, and then later when you reactivate it with a drip of water, then it really starts to run, which is very exciting. Or I guess it could be very tragic if that's not what you wanted, but it's very exciting for me. So I'm trying different textures, little crosses, lines, circles, and and creating just this otherworldly picture that somehow looks like a waterfall, but one would be hard pressed to place it in Silver Falls State Park. So I'm going to leave you here, and I'm going to leave this playing silent, and I'll get this up on YouTube. And thank you for watching. Thank you for everyone who has subscribed. Actually, I would like to say a big thank you because this channel has grown faster than the usual YouTube channel, and I'm still learning. So I very much appreciate everybody's encouraging words and comments and likes and subscribes and all of that kind of stuff, because it really is an encouraging thing for my my little hobby here. All right, thank you. I will post again on Friday of next week. Have a great week and a great weekend. Bye.